You're listening to episode 602 of the Father Bills Podcast. Welcome back. This week's episode is entitled All That He Did and Taught Us, given on the Solemnity of the Ascension of the Lord, 2017. In preparation for today's homily, I was thinking about Memorial Day, and I was reminded of someone who I remember on Memorial Day, and that is my own father, who was a World War II veteran and served in the Coast Guard. I am proud that he served in the conflict. I'm proud that he decided to give of his time and talent to help in this service. We were fortunate that he didn't see combat, and he was able to come back to us. But that was not the case for many, many people. And today we remember them, the persons who gave and paid the ultimate price for our country. I remember then some lessons that my dad had told me, or at least demonstrated to me. And they all then led to a basic truth. And without using his words, but using mine, he taught me to be a person of straightforward honesty, even amidst corruption or other opinions. Because of that, he wasn't always liked by his peers. He wouldn't always go along with the crowd. He was very involved in this church. He was a Knight of Columbus. He was a fourth-degree Knight. He was the Grand Knight. He served on the pastoral council and was always a help to the priests. But he wasn't a perfect man. He was a sinner like all of us. He worked hard and sometimes almost too hard. Some of my best memories are of him striving very hard to help us go out on camping trips. We go out to Prineville Reservoir. As I look back on it, I think about all the work that had to be done, him and my mom, and think about it. I'm the ninth of 9 kids, so you would basically be taking an entire baseball team with you going camping. And yes, we did play baseball when we were camping. He was a person that would say and do what he said. He was a person of his word. And I take that to heart as I journeyed towards the ministry of priestly life, and especially as a pastor. It is important that we all do this. As a pastor, when I ask someone to do something, they say yes, and then they don't do it. Well, that cripples the ministry minimally. And it makes me less likely to ask them to come forward again. The scriptures even tell us elsewhere that let our yes be yes and our no mean no. Be people of integrity, in other words. My dad was one of them. Imagine if our members of the military serving did not do that they said they would, but they wouldn't. Imagine being in a foxhole saying, I'll cover your back, and then they don't. Would you trust that soldier? Imagine a fire person saying, I will make sure I get there as soon as I can. I'll take care of everything. I will do my best. And they run from the scene. Those emergency service workers would be useless to us. Our veterans, and especially those who we remember today, they said they would serve unto death. And today we honor them and remember them and pray for them. They were killed in their efforts to defend the principles of our country. And it is a good thing that we have this national holiday, if only to remind a sometimes forgetful people that there are many heroes that we are indebted to for all they did and taught us. Jesus was a straightforward person in honesty amidst great corruption in his day. He did what he said he would do. He taught his disciples and others. And before he ascended into heaven, this solemnity that we are reminded of today and we celebrate, Jesus told his disciples and us to remember these things, what he did and what he taught. His last teaching is what we call the Great Commission. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. You might say, well, we've gone to all the corners of the world. Well, we may have, but here at home, 74% of people in our area have no affiliation with anything, let alone Christianity. So we don't have to go to the far reaches of the world. We have here to deal with, here to proclaim that gospel. But before we go out and do that, I thought I'd offer a brief reflection on just 2 words from his Great Commission. And one was the word disciple. Go out and make disciples, he said. A disciple, working in the Greek here, is a learner or a follower. And this is different than an apostle. An apostle is one who's sent. But at this point, he's talking to those. They're to hear him, learn from him, and then do it. Jesus makes it clear that his disciples are people who are to do what he commanded them to do. And remember some of the things he commanded them to do, and us. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and love your neighbor. He even said, love your enemy. He said, do good to those who persecute you. Pray for those who maltreat you. He told us to feed the poor, to clothe the naked. He told us many things. We are also told by him that if we do not pick up our own cross, we are not worthy of being his disciple. That means we don't come into being a disciple and going out into the world perfect. In fact, that's often an obstacle to people. They say, I can't do this because, and they have a litany of things and a list of why they can't. Remember, we're not to go out for our own personal gain, but rather put aside ourselves, pick up our cross, and go out. A disciple is a person that does not work with their preferences, but rather puts the decision-making and the actions in the guidance of Jesus Christ first of all. Imagine if I said to myself, well, I want to do something that's going to make me rich and famous. Would I be a priest today? No. I'd think of a bunch of other things that gain a lot of money. A disciple is someone that reflects deeply on Christ's life and teaching and tries to imitate him in accordance to one's individual station in life. So if you're like a teacher in a school, how do you love your students? How do you exemplify by the actions that you do that what you say is what you do and that what you do is loving? How do you, as a salesperson, be a person of integrity, a person that is out for the better good of that person and not just sheer profit? See, all of these things challenge us in whatever our state of life might be. I mean, even if you're a plumber, being a good plumber, being a Christian plumber isn't just throwing a bunch of pipes together and hoping that they work, but rather, and it sounds strange, to make the best plumbing job you ever could make in that person's situation. The people that we are hiring to do contract for our church. Tom Hall of S&B James is a Catholic from Central Point, and he is doing an excellent job to guide us. We're not getting half-baked people that want to do a half-baked job. God deserves our best, and disciples do their best. So that brings me to another word that was in the scriptures, and it was observe. The Greek word for observe means to guard, to keep watch over, to prepare. If we are truly disciples of Christ, we will know what he did and taught. We will also be able to recognize when someone or even a culture is doing something that is counter to what he taught. Some people say, well, I'm Christian, and they'll propose something, and it's not what Christ taught. Therein lies our difficulty as being disciples. Do we know our faith? If someone came up to you this weekend, and especially this weekend, Memorial Weekend, we have a big festival here in town. When you go, will you take Christ with you? Will you be Christ for others when you go out there? And when someone comes up to you and maybe challenges you or brings up a conversation and has some honest questions, could you give them a reason for your hope and faith? Could you hold a charitable conversation with someone who is broken and seeking, or with someone who is upset and angry? Today, that's a commodity, because the first thing we do is divide, polarize, and blame. Our first call should be to deprecate our own self, admit that we're sinners and that we're on our own journey, but willing to accompany others on the same journey, knowing that we are deeply loved, but also broken. And knowing that, will that person then come to encounter Jesus through you? I would like to tell you that if you do those things, they will see him more clearly. For arrogance becomes a place of shutting doors, thinking you're all that. I know it all. Well, I've been in seminary for 7 years, been a priest for 17 more, and I don't even know everything. As disciples, we strive to observe all that he did and taught. Jesus, who feeds us and heals us through the Eucharist. And so we must recognize that we are broken too and loved. So this weekend, make an effort to show the love of Christ despite any resentments you have with somebody, disagreements that may be there, a difference in politics, or any other obstacles that may occur. Would you be the first one to deprecate? Would you be the first one to find some common ground? We're called to love as Christ loved. We do not have to give up what we believe. And in fact, even better yet would be to stand for what you believe. The Jesus Christ who went up to sinners and loved them was inspired by others. I am by you. Listen and show compassion for those who are poor or troubled in any way. This Memorial Weekend, we can give of ourselves, die to ourselves, and be love to others. For by these simple acts of kindness and love, others may come to know Jesus, who is our good shepherd, who is the divine shepherd, the divine physician, and who ascended into heaven as we celebrate today. Remember all of our beloved deceased servicemen and women, what they did and what they taught us. Remember and observe all that, even more, what our Lord did and taught us, which has inspired countless saints to give everything they had to proclaim the gospel. We stand on the shoulders of giants, and more so, we stand on the rock who is Christ, who did and taught us the truth. We are Christ's disciples. May we be straightforward in honesty and compassion this weekend as our nation honors our beloved dead who paid the ultimate price for our nation. May they too inspire us to be the disciples of Christ that we are all meant to be. Thank you again for listening to this episode of the Father Bill's podcast. You can always go to my website, fatherbill.org, FRBILL.org, and there you'll find all my social media connections, as well as a portal to just directly email me, and I promise I will connect and email you back. And until next time, may God bless you and have a great week. Bye-bye.